In this video, I'm going to talk about why the guitar is easy to pick up and teach yourself how to play, but it's a very difficult instrument to master. Basically, almost every guitar player is self-taught to a certain extent. It's so easy to just pick up the guitar, learn a shape with your fingers, and then you're off, you're making music, you can sound like your favorite records, it only takes a couple chords, a couple shapes, and right there you're a self-taught guitar player. You're making music and you're having fun. And then, you're going along your journey, you're learning more chords, you're learning a couple guitar solos, and you hit this wall. And a lot of people call it the intermediate plateau. And it's basically this place where maybe you're comfortable on one portion of the neck, but you're not comfortable moving freely across different places on the neck of the guitar. Or maybe you can hear all of this beautiful music in your head, but you really struggle to figure out how to play it and where to play it, or how to play it in different keys or different positions or any of this. And that is really what describes being at that advanced state. An advanced guitar player isn't someone who can play any song. An advanced guitar player is someone who can figure out on their own how to play any song. Any sound that they're hearing on their head or any sound that they're hearing on a record, that you can just figure that out because of your knowledge of the guitar and your knowledge of music. So why is it that the guitar is so easy to pick up but difficult to master? It has to do with this geometric relationship that we have with the guitar. Like I was saying earlier, when we learn our chords, it's a geometric shape. We just put our fingers down into a specific shape on the guitar, and whatever shape that is, we associate it with the chord that we're playing. We also have this approach when we're learning our scales. I'm sure everybody knows our favorite minor pentatonic shape, right? And we learn that as a box, which is so funny to me because, yes, it literally is a box in terms of the geometric shape on the fretboard. But when you think about the pentatonic scale, like if you have a musical understanding of what the pentatonic scale is, it has all these implications of, it's like the most floaty scale, and it's one of the most popular scales in many different cultures because it lacks a certain amount of tension, and it's kind of like, it has this light feel to it. Like, nothing about the sound of the pentatonic scale or the music theory behind the pentatonic scale has anything to do with a box. Like, it's not a box scale at all. But on our fretboard, we think about boxes because of the geometrical shape and the relationship that we have with it. So what I'm getting to is that when you make that jump from a beginner and intermediate guitar player to an advanced guitar player, what they've done is they've made the jump from having a geometric kind of shapes-based relationship with the fretboard to being able to see the fretboard in musical terms. So what does musical terms mean? It's things like scale degrees and chord tones and understanding the note that you're playing. So for example, if I play this D note, and I play it within the context of a C chord, that D is the 9. So I understand that it's the 9th of the chord. That D note has a function, it has a musical function. And most guitar players, we just, oh yeah, here's our C, I guess we would call this specifically C add 9. Here's our C add 9 chord, here's the shape, but they're not really thinking about which note is the 9. What does the 9 mean? How is that different than any other kind of C chord? And we could take that same note, that D chord, and if we put it in a G major 7, that D note is now functioning as the 5th of the chord. So it's understanding that that D note can be the same note, but depending on the context, it has a different function. So this is the kind of stuff that I'm talking about in terms of musical terms. When we're playing notes, when we're playing chords, we understand how each note is functioning within the context of the music. Because if we're not even thinking about the guitar and we're just listening to music, that's how we hear music. We hear music as music functions, which is one of the biggest reasons why when you hear a melody and then that melody is transposed to another key, maybe I'm jumping a little bit ahead, but I'm going to finish this thought. When you hear the same melody transposed to another key, you hear it as the same melody. Yes, you can observe that the key has changed, but you hear the same melody. which means that our ears don't listen to the specific notes themselves as much as we listen to the relationship between the notes, which means that the function of the notes is the most important thing. So this is the jump that beginner and intermediate guitarists must make to get to that advanced stage, is to have a musical relationship with the fretboard. And basically, if you don't make that jump, then you have to spend the rest of your guitar life more or less guessing when you're playing notes, like hoping that this note is going to sound good, or knowing that it sounds good because you're playing the right scale, but you only know it's the right scale because of the shape that you've memorized on the fretboard. Which, I love being able to express myself and hear the music in my head that I want to make and be able to create that on the instrument. So, I would definitely love to help anyone and everyone get to that place where you can see the fretboard in musical terms and you can express yourself freely. Another element that's really interesting about the guitar that's different than a lot of other instruments is that guitar is one of the only instruments that requires no preconceived notion of the sound that you're going to produce before actually producing that sound. So what I mean is that, going back to our shapes and chords discussion, I can look at a piece of paper and I can learn a shape. Let's take a D chord, for example. And I can put that shape down on the fretboard, just like this, without thinking at all about how it's going to sound. And I can have my fingers down here and I can just bang away at the strings. And it can sound like a beautiful chord without having any preconceived notion of what that sound is going to sound like before actually strumming it. Other instruments, like the trumpet, for example, if you don't know what the sound is that you're trying to make on the other side of the horn before you try and play a note on the trumpet, you are absolutely screwed. It's not going to happen. You have to know what the sound is because of the way the trumpet is constructed. You have to have this you hold your mouth in a very specific way, and there's only 3 buttons, so there's lots of different combinations, but even without the buttons, the way that you change the shape of your mouth will change the notes that you're playing off of. It's super difficult. So the trumpet is an example of an instrument that's difficult to pick up. The guitar is an example of an instrument that's really easy to pick up. Also, right here, the upright bass, there's no frets on the upright bass. So if you don't hear the sound in your head before trying to play the notes, it's not going to happen. You have to hear it in your mind first, which is why some of the other notes, or some of the other instruments, even though they're more difficult to pick up, you get a lot more ear training and you have a little bit of a better musical understanding right from the get-go because of the way that the instrument is designed. And then for us, it's pros and cons. On the guitar, we have these frets that help us out. We have this geometrical shapes that really help us out, which makes it easy to learn on our own, but makes it really difficult to master the guitar and make that jump to an advanced state. The last thing that I'll mention that's really difficult about the guitar is the way that the guitar is tuned. So most of the strings are tuned to this distance that we call a perfect fourth. So, the bottom 2 strings are a perfect fourth, perfect fourth, perfect fourth. And then right here, this G string and this B string, the distance between those 2 strings is just a little bit smaller than the distance between all the other strings. Which, if it was just consistent, then we would be able to really navigate different places on the fretboard so much easier. Yes, it is just a little bit of a difference, and once you understand that difference, you can navigate around it all right. Of course, there are incredible guitar players who exist and are making amazing music on this instrument. So, and the reason that it's tuned that way, to my knowledge, is to really kind of help with the open chord. If we tuned it the exact same tuning, which I could do that really quick. Yeah, why don't we do that? It'll be fun. It'll just take a second. Close enough for jazz. So we all know the E chord, how we usually play it, right? If we were to tune the guitar in perfect fourths all the way, this E chord, now we would have to play it as, let's see here, I need this one, and then I would need this one, right? And then I would need to do a double stop right here. This doesn't look difficult, but it's really tough because my middle finger is holding down two strings. So my middle finger is holding down the A string and the D string. So this is a super tough chord. Like, this isn't easy. This is how you'd have to play an E chord if we tuned the strings in just perfect fourths. So again, this right here is our regular E chord that we know and love, right? And if I played it right now, it would sound bad because of the way that the guitar is tuned. So to compensate for the tuning, I literally have to play it like this. So all of our open chords, all of those open shapes, would be so much more difficult with the perfect fourths. So in an effort to be able to see the guitar more from E string to E string, and also our bar chords and our open shapes, the little tiny the smaller interval in between the G string and the B string is a good thing. It's taken me a long time to come to terms with that because while I spent years digging into the fretboard and really understanding it, that one little change in the tuning of the strings has really been frustrating for me, because it means that now I'm really getting off on a rabbit trail here, but it's important to talk about because this is the real answer of why the guitar is a difficult instrument to master, and it's so easy to pick up. It's a lot of it does have to do with this tuning. Basically, since this tuning is difficult, or since this tuning is different, it means that when you're learning triads and you're learning scales and you're learning intervals, you kind of have to do like 3 times the work or 4 times the work that you would if you were on like a mandolin, for example, because since the tuning is different, the shapes are all different depending on what string set you're on. Whereas on a mandolin, all the strings are tuned like exactly the same distance. So if you know a scale in one position, it's a lot easier to transfer it to a different fretboard position because all the strings are tuned appropriately. I feel like I'm rambling on, but this is important. And it does take a little bit of explanation to really get through this. And that's why YouTube is pretty fun, because I can make a video like this. I can just talk and explain myself and have a little fun while we're doing it. So this has been a very verbose explanation of why the guitar is fairly easy to pick up, and most guitar players are self-taught to a certain extent, but it's a difficult instrument to master. Whereas some other instruments like the trumpet or the upright bass or the violin, those instruments are a lot more difficult in the beginning. And I'm not going to say that they're like easy to master or whatever, but if you're a trumpet player, along your journey, you do have a better ear and more of a better musical understanding than most guitar players who have been playing guitar for the same amount of time. Or at least that's been my experience with the trumpet players and the bass players that I've interacted with. So yeah, the last thing I'll say is that this is also the reason for like the Guitar Center effect, where you walk into Guitar Center and the guitar room is like annoying. Everyone is making these noises that are just annoying, and you walk into the piano room and it's typically like people are playing actual music, like people are playing songs. It's like pretty, because pianists, you have this natural understanding of musical terms because all the notes are in a linear order, so you can see the relationship between the notes much easier. Whereas you walk into the guitar room, and the guitar room is typically filled with people who just put their hands on a specific shape and they just go for it without really thinking about the sound that they're trying to produce before just going for it. But I too love rock and roll, so there's a place for that for sure. I feel like I've touched all the points that I wanted to touch on, so thanks for hanging out. In the comments below, what I'd like you to write out is if you found anything interesting in this video. Is there something that you already knew that now you have a deeper understanding of because of the explanation? Or did I say something that you've never thought of before? Or is it sparking some sort of a new thought for you? So if you have any of those thoughts to share, please throw it in the comments. Otherwise, thanks for hanging out, and I will definitely see you in the next video.